The courtroom buzzed with low murmurs as the bailiff called the next case. In walked a teenage boy, barely old enough to vote, dressed in an ill-fitting suit and clutching a briefcase twice his size. The judge leaned back, smirking. "This isn't a science fair, son," he quipped. But no one was laughing 10 minutes later. When 17-year-old Alex Turner stepped into courtroom 9B, he wasn't there to be judged. He was there to fight for justice. No law degree, no formal legal training, just one hidden identity, a tragic backstory, and a plan no one saw coming. What began as mockery turned into a legal masterclass. And by the time it ended, the judge himself was questioning everything he thought he knew about justice, youth, and the truth. The cold creak of the courtroom doors snapped heads around as they swung open. Murmurs rippled through the gallery. All eyes landed on the boy who entered. No taller than 5'6", clean-shaven, and barely filling out the navy blue suit that hung awkwardly on his narrow frame. A worn brown briefcase dangled from his hand, the leather edges frayed, the brass clasps loose. The bailiff instinctively stepped forward, expecting to escort a wayward witness back to the hall. But the boy strode with quiet confidence, stopping directly at the defense table and setting down the briefcase with a heavy thud. Judge Halberd, a veteran of the bench with 22 years behind the gavel and a reputation for biting sarcasm, peered over his half-moon glasses. "And you are?" he asked with a slow, skeptical drawl. "Alexander Turner, Your Honor." The teen replied evenly, voice clear, tone formal. "I'm here to represent Mr. Elijah Mercer." A long silence followed. Someone in the back snorted. The opposing attorney, a burly man in his 50s named Carl Dorman, chuckled openly. "You're kidding, right?" Dorman said, stepping forward. "Is this a birthday prank? Or are we filming some new courtroom reality show?" Judge Halberd sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Son, this isn't a school debate tournament. This is Superior Court. Real people, real consequences. Where are your parents?" "My parents are not involved in this matter, sir," Alex said. But Mr. Mercer's legal representative filed for a substitution of counsel 2 days ago, and the court was notified. The clerk shuffled through a file folder, frowning. Your Honor." "He's not wrong. There's a filing here. It lists Alexander Turner as appearing pro se on behalf of the defendant." Judge Halberd stared at the paper like it had personally offended him. "Pro se? That implies the defendant is representing himself." "I'm acting under a limited power of attorney, Your Honor," Alex replied. "It's included in the documentation. Mr. Mercer has waived his right to formal counsel in writing." Dorman scoffed. "He waived counsel for this? A child? This is a violation of the Sixth Amendment. You can't let this circus go forward." The judge waved a hand. "Relax, Dorman. We're not going to trial with Doogie Howser over here. Bailiff, get this young man a seat in the gallery. We'll appoint temporary counsel until we sort this out." Alex didn't flinch. "With respect, Your Honor, the Constitution guarantees the right to legal representation, but also the right to self-representation. Mr. Mercer has exercised that right, and I am his chosen agent. The law permits this." Judge Halberd leaned forward, expression hardening. "Listen here, Mr. Turner. This is not a classroom. This is not a movie. This is real court. You can memorize a few legal phrases, sure, but law isn't something you play at. People like me have spent decades learning to master it. Then it shouldn't take long to determine whether I've come prepared," Alex said, looking the judge in the eye. "Allow me to present my motion to dismiss, and if I fail to meet the standards of this court, I'll withdraw immediately." A heavy silence followed. The judge's eyes narrowed. "You think you can meet the standards of this court?" "I know I can meet the standards of justice," Alex answered. The room fell still. Even Dorman's smug expression wavered slightly, his brows rising just a touch. The courtroom wasn't laughing anymore. Something in the boy's voice, calm, precise, unwavering, had shifted the atmosphere. Judge Halbert exhaled through his nose, leaning back. Fine. 10 minutes. No more. You've got the floor, counselor. He added the last word with a smirk. But it didn't land the same this time. Alex opened the briefcase with care, pulling out a stack of neatly organized documents. His hands didn't shake. He didn't glance at the audience. He placed one paper on the table, tapped it twice with his finger, and looked up. My client, he began, has been charged with grand larceny based on circumstantial evidence and a single eyewitness account, both of which fall apart under even the most basic scrutiny. Judge Halbert raised an eyebrow, but said nothing. Dorman shifted uncomfortably. Alex continued. The prosecution's key witness has a documented history of perjury in civil court, a fact I will prove with official transcripts. Furthermore, the security footage submitted as evidence was obtained illegally, without a warrant, rendering it inadmissible under People v. Goldsmith. I respectfully move to dismiss on grounds of insufficient admissible evidence and improper procedure. He handed a copy of his motion to the clerk, who, flustered, passed it up to the bench. Judge Halbert's fingers drummed on the wood as he skimmed the document. Slowly, the smirk faded from his face. The room held its breath. When he finally looked up, his eyes didn't carry sarcasm anymore, just curiosity, and maybe the early edges of concern. Mr. Dorman, the judge said slowly, do you have a response to the motion? Dorman swallowed. Not at this time, Your Honor. I'll need a recess to review. The judge nodded, never taking his eyes off Alex. 10-minute recess granted. The gavel hit the wood, but its sound wasn't what echoed through the courtroom. It was the silence that followed, the kind of silence that says, everything just changed. As the courtroom reassembled after recess, the energy in the room had shifted. Gone was the dismissive laughter, replaced by quiet murmurs and uncertain glances. Even Judge Halbert's posture had changed, no longer leaning back in casual skepticism, but now sitting forward, elbows on the bench, lips pressed together in scrutiny. The boy had earned 10 minutes. Now he was about to earn the courtroom's full attention. Alex stood alone at the defense table, flanked only by a quiet, gray-haired man in a wrinkled button-down shirt. Elijah Mercer, the accused. Mercer looked unsure, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He hadn't spoken much, not even to Alex. He'd agreed to this gamble out of desperation. But now he was watching something unfold that even he didn't understand. Judge Halbert rapped the gavel once. Court is back in session. Mr. Turner, proceed. Alex stepped forward with the same calm he'd shown earlier. No falter, no stutter. He began. Your Honor, before the court makes any ruling on the motion to dismiss, I respectfully request to introduce 3 exhibits. They are foundational to the argument I intend to build, and each directly challenges the integrity of the evidence presented by the prosecution. Judge Halbert nodded. Submit them. Alex handed labeled copies to the bailiff, who distributed them. Exhibit A, Exhibit B, and Exhibit C. Exhibit A. A certified copy of court records showing that the prosecution's star witness, a neighbor who had allegedly seen Elijah Mercer loading stolen goods into a van, had been previously charged with filing a false police report during a tenant dispute. Exhibit B. A time-stamped set of security camera stills from a nearby ATM, showing Mercer withdrawing cash during the exact window when the alleged theft occurred. Exhibit C. A metadata report on the prosecution's key video evidence, one that showed the break-in. The report revealed the footage had been edited using third-party software 2 days before the footage was submitted to the police. Dorman was already on his feet, eyes wide. Objection. This evidence wasn't submitted during discovery. Your Honor, Alex cut in smoothly. As this is a motion to dismiss based on constitutional grounds, the court may consider new exculpatory evidence if it directly undermines probable cause. I cite People v. Torres, 2007, as precedent. Judge Halberd raised an eyebrow. He's correct, Mr. Dorman. Sit down. Dorman blinked, his mouth open, but dropped into his chair, stunned. Alex continued, his voice now rising with quiet intensity. The prosecution's case rests on two legs. 1, the eyewitness. 2, the video. Exhibit A proves the witness has a documented history of dishonesty and personal conflict with my client. Exhibit B provides a time-stamped alibi that places Mr. Mercer blocks away at the time of the incident. And Exhibit C, he walked toward the screen and tapped it, proves the video was tampered with. If we are to believe the footage shows Mr. Mercer committing this crime, we must also accept that the prosecution failed to verify its integrity, or worse, knowingly presented doctored evidence. Either scenario calls into question the admissibility of their entire argument. The courtroom was dead silent. Dorman stood again, less confidently this time. Your Honor, even if the footage has been altered, that doesn't mean Mr. Mercer didn't commit the crime. We still have motive and partial corroboration. Alex turned toward him, voice sharp. Motive? Mr. Dorman claims my client had motive because he was recently laid off. But I have bank statements showing he was offered a severance package, plus a job interview scheduled the day after the alleged theft. That's not motive. That's narrative manipulation. He passed the papers forward. Another hush. Judge Halberd flipped through the documents, his expression unreadable. Mr. Turner, he said finally, are you telling this court that the state's evidence has not only been undermined but is in fact inadmissible? I am, Your Honor. The state has built a case on faulty foundations, and they failed to meet the burden of proof even at this preliminary stage. The judge leaned back in his chair, folding his hands. You know, he said slowly, I've seen seasoned attorneys walk into this courtroom with half the poise you've shown today. But this is either genius or the best performance I've ever seen. Alex didn't flinch. It's not a performance, sir. It's justice, and someone needs to care about it when no one else will. Judge Halberd looked down at the papers again, then at Alex, then at Mercer, who, for the first time, looked like he might cry. You have a point, the judge muttered. One I can't ignore. He turned to the court reporter. Strike the scheduled testimony of the eyewitness. We'll need to review the admissibility of the video evidence before proceeding. The motion to dismiss remains under review, but I'm placing the burden back on the prosecution to justify this case's continuation. Alex nodded once and walked calmly back to the defense table. No gloating, no grin, just quiet resolve. Elijah Mercer whispered, How the hell did you know all that? Alex didn't look at him. His eyes stayed on the bench. Because I've been preparing for this day since I was 12. By the time the court recessed for lunch, the gallery had transformed into a hive of whispered speculation. Every hallway echoed with one question. Who is Alex Turner? No one could place him. No law firm claimed him. No school had records of him interning. No one had ever seen a teenager command a courtroom with that level of legal precision. Even Judge Halberd had taken a prolonged pause before leaving the bench, his usual curt exit replaced with a lingering look at the boy who had just challenged the system. And won, at least for now. Carl Dorman was furious. He made 3 phone calls during lunch. 1 to his legal assistant, 1 to the state bar, and 1 to his superior. None could explain how a minor had slipped through the cracks and ended up at the defense table. They all asked the same thing. Are you sure he's not some kind of legal prodigy? But the answer came not from Dorman, nor from the court, but from the least expected place. A local reporter named Lena Whitaker. Lena had been covering courtroom drama for over a decade. She had seen grandstanding, clever stunts, even the occasional meltdown. But what she witnessed that morning unsettled her. So, while others were eating sandwiches in the courthouse cafe. Lena was combing public records. And within 30 minutes she found him. Alex Turner. Born in Springfield, raised by a single mother, Diane Turner. No father listed. A quiet academic record. Until the age of 12, when everything changed. That was the year Diane Turner was arrested, tried, and convicted for embezzlement from the private school, where she worked as an administrator. It was a highly publicized case at the time, with the prosecution painting her as a desperate single mother caught stealing tuition funds. But something didn't sit right, even then. The school's records were suspiciously inconsistent. The defense attorney assigned to her had failed to challenge a number of key documents and had called 0 expert witnesses. Diane Turner was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Her appeal never gained traction. Alex was sent to live with a distant cousin, a mechanic named George Mercer, who happened to be the same Elijah Mercer now sitting in the courtroom on trial. Lena dug deeper. That same year, the boy had stopped attending traditional school. According to family court records, he'd been granted permission for specialized homeschooling. Library records from Springfield's public system showed one borrower checked out over 250 books on criminal justice, evidence law, trial procedure, and constitutional rights over the next 4 years. All under the same name, Alex Turner. He'd vanished from public view after age 14. Until now. Lena didn't waste a second. She typed up a concise, explosive headline and clicked publish. Boy who defended accused man in court is self-taught legal prodigy. After mother's controversial conviction. Within the hour, the courtroom buzz had turned electric. Reporters started gathering near the courthouse steps. Courtroom 9B, which had been sparsely attended that morning, now had a line out the door. Word had spread like wildfire. When court resumed at 2 p.m., the change was immediate. As Alex walked in, this time with his briefcase pressed tightly to his chest, the silence wasn't mocking. It was reverent. Judge Halbert entered and paused, glancing at the press row in the back. He sat slowly, his face more contemplative than commanding. "I assume everyone's caught up on the news," he said, his tone flat. Alex didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on the table in front of him, but his posture remained upright. Halbert continued, "Mr. Turner, I read the article. Is it true?" "Yes, Your Honor. You've had no formal education in law?" "Not in the traditional sense. I studied independently for 5 years. I've read every major casebook taught in first-year law, every ruling by this court for the last decade, every appellate challenge involving constitutional misapplication of evidence. I've memorized hundreds of precedents. And you did this after your mother's conviction?" Alex looked up now, and his voice cracked ever so slightly. "Yes." A hush fell. Dorman stood up slowly, but this time his voice lacked bluster. "Your Honor, I move to delay the case pending a review of this young man's qualifications. The courtroom is not a place for personal vendettas or redemption arcs." Alex turned to face him. "I'm not here for redemption. I'm here because no one cared when my mother was thrown into a cell over manipulated records. Because I watched an attorney fall asleep during her trial. Because no one cross-examined the financial officer who submitted false spreadsheets. Because the system let her fall through the cracks. And now it's trying to do the same to the only man who protected me when the world didn't." He paused. "I didn't come here to prove I was smart. I came here to prove that justice can be learned. And when no one gives you the tools, you build them yourself." Even Dorman couldn't meet his eyes. Judge Halbert leaned back, silent for a long beat. "I don't know what the hell you are, Mr. Turner. A genius, a tragedy, a mistake the system never saw coming. But what I do know is this. We are not delaying anything. This court recognizes your standing. And this court is watching very closely." Alex nodded, and the trial continued. But nothing in that courtroom would ever be the same again. With the court now gripped by the mystery of Alex Turner's past and the growing credibility of his arguments, the case against Elijah Mercer teetered on a precipice. The gallery was packed. The media hovered outside. And yet, Alex seemed unaffected by the rising pressure. He wasn't here to impress. He was here to prove. On the second full day of the hearing, Alex arrived with a new folder under his arm. Inside were documents that had taken months to gather, evidence he'd quietly pieced together through Freedom of Information requests, late-night emails, and favors pulled from kind-hearted clerks who saw something in the determined teenager asking questions no one else dared. Today, he intended to reveal the truth, that Elijah Mercer wasn't just innocent, he had been framed. As the judge called the session to order, Alex stood, gaze fixed on the prosecution table. "Your Honor, I request the court's permission to introduce a surprise witness." Carl Dorman scoffed. "Your Honor, the defense can't just spring new witnesses on the court. That's a violation of protocol." Alex countered calmly. The witness in question was discovered during ongoing investigation prompted by inconsistencies in the prosecution's case. Under People v. Sanders, the court may allow late entry of a witness if doing so serves the interests of justice. Judge Halberd raised an eyebrow. "Who's the witness, Mr. Turner?" Alex looked across the courtroom, toward the rear door. "Ms. Felicia Harrow," he said, "the warehouse supervisor who originally reported the theft." A ripple of surprise passed through the courtroom. Dorman's face twitched. "Ms. Harrow is here?" Judge Halberd asked, genuinely intrigued. "She is. I spoke with her yesterday." Dorman jumped up. "I object. This is manipulative. She's a prosecution witness who declined to testify. This is improper." "Mr. Dorman," Halberd interrupted, "sit down." The doors opened. Felicia Harrow stepped in. A stout, sharp-eyed woman in her late 50s, wearing a faded blazer and clutching a worn handbag. She looked nervous. Alex motioned for her to take the stand. As she was sworn in, she avoided eye contact with both Dorman and the gallery. Only when Alex approached did she lift her gaze. "Ms. Harrow," Alex began, "you were the person who initially filed the police report regarding the alleged theft from Capital Supply Depot, correct?" "Yes," she said softly. "You claimed that you arrived on site at 7:45 a.m. and discovered the missing equipment?" "Yes." Alex nodded. "But you didn't file the report until 4:15 that afternoon. Why the delay?" Felicia shifted in her seat. I wasn't sure what I'd seen." "You weren't sure? Or you were told to wait?" A pause. Felicia's jaw tightened. "I was told to wait," she admitted. "By whom?" She hesitated. Then finally, "By Mr. Darren Crow, regional manager." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. Alex continued gently. "Did Mr. Crow instruct you to name Mr. Mercer as a suspect?" Felicia nodded slowly. "He said Elijah had access, that it would make sense, said it would go away quickly." "And what if I told you that Mr. Crow's signature appears on multiple shipment records that coincide with the dates of other reported losses from that same facility?" Alex pulled out a series of documents and held them up. Signed authorizations, all bypassing inventory protocol, all traced back to unauthorized third-party buyers. Dorman stood again, furious. "This is a farce. Where did this so-called evidence come from?" "I obtained it through whistleblower records from Capital's internal audit department," Alex said, handing a copy to the judge. "They launched a quiet investigation 2 months ago. Mr. Crow resigned last week, and in doing so, unknowingly confirmed a pattern of falsified thefts covered by fake witness statements and convenient suspects." Felicia's voice cracked as she spoke again. "I didn't know about all of it, I swear, but I knew something was wrong. I just didn't want to lose my job." Alex turned to Judge Halberd. "This entire case rests on a lie. one orchestrated by a corporate executive who's been quietly covering his own tracks by setting up scapegoats. Mr. Mercer is one of them. Judge Halberd looked stunned. His eyes scanned the paperwork Alex had presented. Then he turned to Dorman. "Mr. Dorman," he said slowly, "were you aware of this internal audit?" "No, Your Honor," Dorman said, pale now. "I was not informed." "Then it would appear you've been fed a compromised narrative." The judge set the papers down with an audible thump. His jaw tightened. "Court will reconvene tomorrow for closing arguments. But I advise the prosecution to reconsider its position." Alex sat down, his shoulders heavy. He didn't smile. He didn't need to. The courtroom was already reeling. He'd done what no one else could. Expose the machine behind the accusation, and in doing so, tilted the entire legal process on its head. Elijah Mercer leaned over to whisper, voice trembling. You saved my life." Alex didn't answer right away. Then, in a quiet voice, "You saved mine first." The final day of the trial arrived like the eye of a storm. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed the steps. Headlines were already circulating across the country. Teen legal prodigy stuns court. Self-taught boy attorney dismantles prosecution. Who is Alex Turner, and why is the legal world watching? But inside courtroom 9B, everything had gone still. The jurors filed in with quiet resolve. Dorman sat stiffly at the prosecution table, no longer indignant, just defeated. Judge Halberd looked worn, but alert, his gavel resting at the ready, as if he too was waiting for something final, something historic. Alex stood slowly, buttoned his borrowed blazer, and walked to the center of the room. He paused. His eyes scanned the courtroom. Not just the jury, but the judge, the gallery, even Dorman. This wasn't just about winning anymore. It was about changing something. He cleared his throat. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "I want to tell you a story." The room leaned in. "It's about a man who didn't ask to be here. A man who kept his head down, worked long hours, never broke a law in his life. A man who took in a scared, angry kid when no one else would, and gave him a place to sleep, to learn, to survive." He looked toward Elijah Mercer, who blinked quickly and lowered his gaze. Then one day, that man goes to work and becomes the center of a crime he didn't commit. Not because there was real evidence, but because he was easy, convenient, because someone up the chain needed a name to protect their own. Alex took a step closer to the jury. "I've spent years studying the law, not in classrooms or lecture halls. I studied it in foster homes, in libraries, in the silence of a one-room apartment while my mother sat behind bars for a crime no one cared enough to question." His voice cracked slightly, but he didn't stop. "I've seen what injustice looks like. I've seen how it feeds on apathy, on silence, on loopholes and lazy arguments and assumptions." He raised the security camera stills in one hand, shaking them gently. "The prosecution wanted you to believe that a grainy video and a witness with a track record of dishonesty was enough to take a man's freedom. But we've shown you the truth. We've shown you metadata manipulation, an alibi, a whistleblower, a corporate cover-up." He placed the exhibits down one by one, like pieces in a puzzle. "But more than evidence, I ask you to use your judgment, not just as jurors, but as people with lives, families, a conscience." He walked back to the defense table and picked up a photo. It was worn, folded in half. He held it up. A picture of him and his mother, smiling outside a courthouse. A photo taken before her conviction, before everything. "I was 13 when I watched my mother be sentenced. She was denied a fair defense. The courtroom treated her like she didn't matter. The judge barely looked at her. Her attorney mispronounced her name. They didn't care. She was just another case." He looked directly at Judge Halberd. "I don't want that to happen here. Not again. The judge looked down, unmoving. Alex turned back to the jury. You've seen what happens when we assume guilt. When we stop asking questions. When we believe a suit and a badge means the story's finished. He paused, then added, Elijah Mercer didn't fail the system. The system tried to fail him. A long silence. Then softly, I ask you, not as a lawyer, because I'm not licensed. Not yet. I ask you as someone who still believes in what this courtroom is supposed to stand for. Truth. Not convenience. Not reputation. Truth. He walked back to the defense table, slowly, calmly. Give that man his name back. With that, he sat down. The courtroom was utterly still. Not a whisper. Not a breath. Even Carl Dorman didn't stand to rebut. He simply shook his head, a ghost of shame crossing his face. Judge Halberd stared at Alex for a long moment. His fingers drummed against the bench. Then, wordlessly, he called for the jury's deliberation. It didn't take long. 35 minutes later, the jury returned. The foreperson, a middle-aged woman in a navy blouse, stood. We find the defendant, Elijah Mercer, not guilty. Gasps, relief, and a low, broken sob from Mercer himself. But the most powerful reaction came from the bench. Judge Halberd stood. He looked directly at Alex. His voice, when it came, was raw. Mr. Turner, I mocked you. I assumed you were a child playing dress-up in a place where lives are decided. I was wrong. He looked down, then back up, and continued. You reminded this courtroom what justice is supposed to be. Not something handed down from robes and titles, but something earned, fought for, protected. His voice cracked. Today, you were the most honorable person in this room. He nodded once. This court stands adjourned. The gavel struck wood, not with force, but with reverence. And just like that, the courtroom exhaled. Alex stood, picked up his folder, and walked out. The boy who had walked in as a joke and walked out a legend.